Good day and welcome back. This is the second installment on the Games Workshop Night Titan build. So as you can see, we've gotten some work done. We've got armor pieces on, we've got paint done, and we've got some work done on the base. So let's talk about what we're doing here. So when I last left this, the skeleton part of the mechanics had been painted up, and you can see they are. I've gone back and I've hit them with a bit of dry brush, and that was about it. I do have the hand magnetized. I can't remember if I mentioned that or not, but I did just put a magnet on the tip of the hand because I'm not quite sure how I want to pose it, and I would like to leave that open. I went with a red and black paint scheme just because it was simple. It was a paint I had handy, and so that's what I was going with. And the only I don't have the top carapace glued on yet, but I did go ahead and glue on the rest of these. The rest of the arms are in place. They are movable. I'm going to go back and do a little bit of touch-up details there. The painting of these was pretty straightforward. It was just two thin coats, a la Duncan Rhodes, and there we go. That was pretty much what I did there. So, and I'm really not being neat. I really don't care because, again, remember, this thing is going to be from a swamp or some other, it's going to be beat up, used, and so forth. So this paint's going to get worn down a lot. So I didn't really worry much about getting a nice smooth coat. Now you can see the coat isn't entirely smooth. If I was actually doing this as a gaming miniature to be displayed as is, I would probably do one more coat, thin watery coat on each one of these. Something else I noticed that the way I did these is I have the bicolor shoulders so that they show one color in each, one color forward, one color back, not, flipped like everything else. And, you know what? I'm okay with that. It's not going to bug me, so I'm just going to go with it. It's not going to bug me enough to where I want to go ahead and repaint it. I used a dark copper for the metallics. Basically, I spray painted all the armor to copper metallic and painted the colors over top of it with the hairy brush. So on to what's next. We also did the base, and what I've done is I've run the wires through. So all I need to do is solder the connection points from these onto those, and then we'll do that. So we're going to do, we're going to start to weather up the model and the armor so that the model itself is weathered and we get it ready for all of the extra work we're going to do to it. And then we're also going to start working on the base. So this was pretty straightforward. It was just taking a bit of foam. You can see what I did. I cut it, dug out the trench for the wires, and then as I put the material over top, that'll just cover all that. So easy peasy. All right, so let's get on to the other things we have to do. All right, so the next step I'm going to take is going to be to do the base. And pretty much this what the rest of this video is going to be, is making the base. Straightforward is the making of the material for it, and just starting with Sculpt-A-Mold. So you take Sculpt-A-Mold. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It works like paper mache. It's goopy cellulose stuff. Just mix it with water and spread it like a paste. For those who aren't familiar with Sculpt-A-Mold, it's actually really cool stuff. It forms up fairly quickly. It's cheap-ish. Mixes up with water, cleans up with water, and you can mold it with water. It's got a pretty rough texture, so I find it very useful for basing like this, right? And you can see as we skip forward, I managed to make the contours of the ground, and now I just push in where I want the feet for the knight to go, which is near where the wires are, right? And then I can just build up the rest of the contours of the land to go where I want. And then just dipping my finger in water, I can smooth out areas. I can make things look differently, right? So it's, this is actually pretty easy to use. The idea here is what I'm doing is either a swamp or a marshy area where the knight's walking. So I want a difference in texture for different areas, right? So I want, higher land. I want sunken, boggy type stuff. So I intend to have the feet mushing into mud, but have other areas that aren't just all mud, and have some overgrowth and so forth. And get all that done in. So I got to kind of make room for where the feet will go. Because remember, when this stuff hardens up, right, it's going to get hard. And then you got to chop it away. So I just keep placing the knight in. You can see it's a little soft right there around the edge where it goes in. And I just keep placing it and unplacing it and placing it and unplacing it until I get it where I want it. And then I'll just, work with the contours a bit. And then you just set it off to dry. Once you get it dry, then you move on to your next steps. Okay, now it's dry. So really what I'm doing here is my first layer of color. There's many, many layers of color that kind of go onto this, but in this case, what I'm doing is I'm going to work on doing the, just giving it a base of brown, because that's kind of what I'm after. So really I just go all the way around. This is just cheap acrylic paint. Eventually, once I do, is I go back and I hit it with layers of brown and green just to change some of the tonality to it, right? And that gives me something to work from. And it creates the main base. It also protects the foam from spray. So once that's done, you can see we've got different colors. We've given it some greens and browns, and it's sort of a mucky mass, right? And that's kind of what I want it to look like. So I apologize, we're at the messy bench now. So here, that's where I want it to go. So now what I need to figure out is what are the other pieces that go in. Now, one of the things I had in my mind is I wanted this thing to look like it was walking by a tree and pushing the tree out of the way. So a cool thing to use is actual branches. Now, I have, not far from me, some nice branches off that I can get from. Some of these will look good, some don't. I ended up choosing this one, but it was too big. Right, so if you look at it, so what I'm doing right now is I'm actually breaking it, because that's where it's right there. So he walks by and he's cracked off the branch as he walks by, and that's the look I wanted to have. But because the thing was too big, what I'm doing now is I'm shrinking it. I'm cutting the trunk down and making it more tight. Bringing the branches together and making it more in scale. And essentially all I do is I cut the branch down. And then I use wire to create a wireframe. Well, not really a wireframe, but a pin, just like you're pinning a model. And that, will then join these pieces of branch together. So I just take, put some glue. And really what I'm doing right here is I'm test fitting it. It's like, how do I want it? And I'm making them short and use either my razor saw or the cutter or whatever, depending on what I want. And the diameters of each of these branches go together, and that gives it more of an in-scale look for what I was after, right? Now, right here, what I'm doing is I got to take a little chink out now. Now I'm breaking it. Snap. And what that does lets me put the tree right where I want it for the hand. So now I'm going back. Right now that I figured it out, we just glue it all together. And then I'll end up using that dark earth paste to mix up some extra trunk where the seam is. I don't need a lot, just need a little bit. Okay, and then we get all this together, and this is a Scenic PVA. This is PVA glue, right? So we'll put that together and we'll let it set off to the side. Once that's dry, we just go ahead and now we place it. Now I've got a couple other branches that that I'm going to put in for decoration or other interest in the thing, in the base. There we go. So again, PVA glue using wire as a station. I did use my moto tool to drill a hole. Now, to get the base a little more interesting, it's, rock and flock time. So I started off with this thin PVA stuff for like trains and train scenery, but I don't really like the way it looks. I don't like the way it lays, and I don't like the way it adheres. So basically I've laid 3 layers and 3 versions, not 3 versions, but 3 grains or gradients of basing, and I wasn't really liking how that thin stuff works. So I just went straight to PVA, like undiluted PVA, and I'm much happier with that, right? So I'll go ahead and I get the PVA put in, use my brush to smear it around so it covers everything I want, and then go back and I just sprinkle in some of the heavier grain rocks, lighter grain ballast, and then come back with this soft foam flock, which gives it this mossy, short grass, sort of boggy kind of look, which is what I'm after. I'm leaving the center clear of actual vegetation because I'm going to go back and put in a bog. Now, once I've done that to the base, I'm going to do that to the trees, because that, again, it ties the trees together. It also makes the trees, gives it more of a an in-scale look. Now, I apologize, this is a really crappy video because it's on that part of the base. I ended up using for glue hairspray. And again, sorry, it's nothing but elbow and so forth, but I struggled at this point. But by adding the flock to the base of the tree, it makes it look like moss has taken over the tree, and that also ties it to the base. And that gave it a lot of the swamp bog look that I was going after. And so, here in a second, that kind of gives you an idea of what that ends up like. So now that I have that done, I'm going to go back and darken up where I want the bog. And all I'm using is Agrexar shade. It's cheap, it's a nice wash, and it gives me the look I want. So I'll go through and hit the place that I want to be boggy, muddy, and I'm just hitting it with that. That's darkening it up. And you can see the different layers of, I put some like sea foam pieces in around to add some more interest. And also tack in a little bit of the Agrexar on a tree, because it spreads along the flock and it changes the tonality. And again, it gives it interest and makes things look a little bit different, which is really what I was after. And that sort of gets the base close to really what I was wanting it to end up being. And once I had that, I pretty much have it where it needs to be. Last up, we'll be weathering the night and then putting it in, and we'll do that in the next video. So, as always, until next time, happy modeling. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to offer up any suggestions. Thank you very much.